everyone, welcome back to Making a Difference One Experiment at a Time. Today we have a really fun experiment called candy chromatography. So I'm sure we all know what candy is, but what is chromatography? I am so glad you guys asked. So chromatography has two parts, chroma and tography, right? So chroma comes from the Greek word color, and the chromatography part comes from the Greek word graphene, which means to write. So today we are going to be seeing how color and the pigment from some candy can be moved and write on our paper that we're going to be using through the use of a salt solution. And I'm sure it sounds kind of confusing right now, but let's jump in and see how it really works. Okay, so today we have a little bit longer of a materials list, so let's just walk through it really quick. So you're going to need some salt, and we're going to be using that to mix with water and create a salt solution. And you also need some water. You are going to need coffee filter paper. You are going to need a little pipette or dropper, scissors, a pencil, and this is really important. We cannot use a pen or markers. We need a pencil for today, because if we use markers or pens, it'll mess with the movement of the pigment from the candy, so we need a pencil. You will also need a ruler for measuring, a tall glass cup, better if it's clear so you can see. You are going to need a 2-liter bottle for mixing the salt solution. You are also going to need toothpicks, one for each color of the candy. You're going to need foil, and lastly you're going to need candy. And you can use either Skittles or M&Ms. Both will work exactly the same. Today I'm going to use Skittles. And depending on which candy you use, that'll also dictate how many toothpicks you use. So if you use Skittles, there are 5 colors, and so you only need 5 toothpicks. But if you use M&Ms, there are 6 different colors, so you only need 6 toothpicks. Alright, so those are our materials, so we can actually start on our experiment. Alright guys, so the first thing we need to do is make a square out of our coffee filter paper. So we're just going to press it out flat, and you're going to use your ruler, and your square needs to be 3" by 3" or 8" by 8". I have an inches ruler today, so I'm going to do that. And so all you do is you just lay it out and you just draw your square, and I recommend drawing it because it'll just make it a little bit more exact, and it'll be easier for you when you're trying to cut it out. And so yeah, so I'm just drawing my square right now. And after you finish drawing your 3" by 3" square, we're just gonna cut it out. And just be careful, the coffee filter paper is pretty thin, so we don't want to rip it. We want our square to be nice and even. So just cut it out along the lines that you just drew, and we are good to go. Alright guys, so now that we have our square, we're like a little bit lopsided, but it's fine. We have our square cut out. We need to draw a line across the bottom, so I'm going to use my ruler to make sure my line is pretty straight. And when you draw your line, you're going to want to leave a little bit of room on each side of the end of the line, and also a little bit of room from the bottom of the paper. So you're going to want to be about 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters above the bottom, and you're going to want to leave a little bit of space on the edges of your line. And then what you want to do is you're going to draw 5 dots across your line, making sure they're about evenly spaced. So the way that I like to do that is I draw 2 at the end, 1 in the middle, and then 1 between each end in the middle. That gives you 5 evenly spaced dots. And then you should have something that looks about like this. So you have a line with your 5 dots on it. And then under each dot, you're going to write the first letter of each color of candy. So for Skittles, we have 5 different colors, 1 for each dot. So I'm going to write yellow, Y for yellow, G for green, R for red, P for purple, and O for orange. And so my line and dots are labeled, and now we are ready for the fun part. Okay, so we don't need that much tin foil, only enough to hold 5 different pieces of candy. So I'm just going to tear off a small piece, something like this. Even smaller would work. There just needs to be room for enough of these so that they each have like a little bit of space in between them. And then I want 1 of each color, so I'm going to try to find 1 of each color in here. So I have purple, orange, green, and I just need a red. Yay, found it. Okay, so now we can start pulling the color off of the candy. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we need 5 drops of water on our tin foil, 1 for each candy color. And what you wanna do is make sure they're spaced out a little bit. So there's a drop there, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're just gonna place each of the candies on these drops of water. And what we wanna do is you wanna wait about 1 minute for the color from the Skittles to be pulled off by the water. So we're gonna allow them to soak for 1 minute, and then after 1 minute, the color from the candy should be soaked in, and so our water drops will all have different colors. If you want, do you want me to like talk over it? Because, actually maybe not. Alright, so after 1 minute is up and your candy has been soaking, you can just take them and go throw them away, which is what I did, and you are left with little drops of water that are all colored with the color of each candy. So now comes a little bit of the tricky and labor-intensive part. So we have a toothpick for each color, and now what we have to do is we have to move the colors onto our filter paper. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your toothpick, you're going to dip the tip of it into the color that you want to move. So I'm going to move yellow first. And so once you dip it in here, you're going to just take it and drop it onto your filter paper. And you're going to do that for each color. And after you do that for each color, you're going to allow the drop to dry. And you want to do this whole process about 3 times. So you just bring over a drop, allow it to dry, and then repeat. And we're gonna repeat the process 2 more times so that in total we did it 3 times. And something else that's important is you wanna make sure that you're using a different toothpick for each color. So now is the time to make our salt solution. It's gonna be a 1% salt solution. So the way we make it is adding half a teaspoon into this. And then we're gonna also add 3 cups of water, which is what I already did. And then you just put the cap back on and you get to shake it back and forth for a little bit. We just want all of the salt to dissolve into our water to make our salt solution. So give it a good shake, have some fun with that. And then after you see that the salt is dissolved in your water, you're gonna take your large glass and you're gonna add a very little bit of water to it. Because what we're going to be doing is inserting our paper into here. And so we only want a very little bit of water to reach about this line so that it has to actually climb up the paper and that it's not touching these initially, if that makes sense. So we're just gonna do a very little bit of water, so there's just like a thin layer on the bottom of the glass. Something along the lines of this, only about 1/4 centimeter high. So very little water, not a little bit more. Yeah, like that is probably good. So now we can add our paper. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your paper and you're gonna fold it in half vertically, and you're gonna fold it so that it should be able to stand by itself in this sort of way. And what we're gonna do is we're going to insert it into our cup, and we're going to watch as the salt solution starts to climb up our paper. And as the salt solution starts to climb up our coffee filter paper, it will grab some of the dye and start carrying it up as well. And so that kind of goes back to the name, chromatography. Color, chroma, and graphene, which is to write in Greek. And so, in a sense, our color is writing on our paper as it's traveling up the paper through the salt solution. So we have to give it a little bit of time, but you guys can probably start to see some of the more dark colors like the purple. You can see it climbing, and the red a little bit too. It's harder to see the yellow and the green because how light the dyes are from the candy, but it's much easier to see on the red and on the purple. So we're gonna give it a little bit of time to move on, and after that we'll take it out and get to examine it a little bit more. As you can see, or I don't know if you can see it super well, but the salt solution is climbing higher and higher onto our paper, and so we're gonna leave it in there until the salt solution is almost to the top, and then once it's almost to the top, we're going to remove it and allow it to dry, and then we can examine it a little bit more. But while this is happening, I want to talk a little bit about the science behind it. So the reason this is working and the reason that the dye and the salt solution are climbing up the paper is because of something called capillary action. Capillary action is the ability of liquids like water to flow upwards in defiance of gravity up, and you see it happening right now. And capillary action is the same power, I guess you can say, of liquids. It's the same ability of liquids to move up. And we see it in real life in nature with trees. So there's water, right, and nutrients at the bottom of the root system, right? And so the roots have, they soak up the water, soak up the nutrients, and then because of capillary action, the water is able to climb up these skinny little roots and go up to the tree and to the branches and give the water to the leaves that need nutrients too. So that's the same sort of power we're seeing right now. The water is able to slowly have the water molecules are attracted to each other, so they slowly climb up the paper. So we're gonna wait a little bit longer and then remove our paper and let it dry. Alright guys, so the salt solution is pretty close to the top of our paper, so we can remove it now carefully. We're just gonna take it out and we're gonna place it here on some tin foil and just allow it to sit a little bit and dry off, and then we can examine it later. So here's our filter paper. It's just drying, and yeah, we'll look at it later and see how the different colors moved. But something I want to talk about is in chromatography, there are two different phases. So there's the mobile phase and there is the stationary phase. So today, our mobile phase was the salt solution. And we call it the mobile phase because mobile means to move, right? And so the salt solution moved up our paper. And so our filter paper is our stationary phase, which means it stayed still and it was the thing that was climbed up or written on by our dye and our colors. Okay guys, that is it for today. It was so fun exploring candy chromatography with you guys. I hope you learned something new. If you liked this video, you can click on the link below. That is the last video of this series, so please tune in for it. It's going to be a surprise, so you'll have to come back and watch it if you want to find out which experiment it is. And I hope to see you guys later. Bye, little scientists!